All right, hey everybody, this is Press Reset. I'm just going to put together a little tutorial here for you guys on sculpting. Not necessarily any actual sculpting techniques, but more so how to use the tools. At least some of the questions that I get from people online regarding the tools. The first one being the grid. The grid can be kind of tricky because it's not one grid; it's many grids. I'll explain what I mean. If you come in immediately to a brand new you just did, and you set a grid down, your default shape is going to immediately be snapped to the one grid. So what I do if I know that I'm sculpting something that is going to use the grid often is I immediately stamp a shape down that is set to the grid. So now when I turn on mirror mode, which if you're using the wands is just tapping the bottom of the wands together like that, honestly, I do not use the DualShock at all to sculpt. So I don't know if there's a shortcut or if you just use the L1 square menu. So everything that I tell you will be using the wands. But back to what I was saying. Turning on mirror mode, I now know that this mirror also is snapped to the grid of this square. So I don't necessarily even have to use this square in my sculpt. I use it as a guideline so that I know pretty much that all of this is centered. And what I meant by that there's many grids, and this is what a lot of people get confused by. And this is what threw me off when I first started, is that say you turn the grid off because you need to make some small movements. And you create a new shape. So you create a new shape here, and it's off the grid. The circle's really not gonna show it that well because it's a sphere. But say yeah, so you got a new shape. Let me turn off mirror. Whoops. Turn off mirror, and you get a new shape that's off the grid. I'll turn grid back on. So now this shape is still on the grid. We could we can add clones, which the shortcut for this with the wands is holding down triangle on your secondary wand and then trigger and pulling. I'm not sure what it is on the DualShock. And then you could keep pressing triangle to, create more clones. But see, this is still on the grid. It's the regular grid. Everything's fine. This though, not so much. It's on this same grid, but it doesn't match itself. So what you do in this case is you put both of your wands on it, and you see here it says set grid origin. So now this is on the grid, and we could tell, probably should have used a square for this example, but if it was a square, now this would perfectly line up with itself. So far, so good. But then you come over here, and there we go. See, this is no longer on grid. It's on a grid, so it'll still match up over here. But pulling one to the left, this is what I get. I can't line it up anymore. So what you have to remember is when you're switching from grid to grid, especially, and this is why I use this technique of having an original, set to the original grid, is always set it back to origin. Once you understand that there are many grids, it's much easier to manipulate things on the grid. And this just got rotated, which is why it wouldn't snap. So the grid can be your friend once you understand how it actually works. And same with mirroring. The mirroring is still there. So yeah, first tip: set grid order. Remember that if you're having trouble keeping things on the grid, and you can still manipulate things to be on this grid. Now this shape isn't going to work because it wasn't built on this grid. But yeah, that's your grid. The second most frequent thing I get asked is about painting. And I understand that this one can also be a headache. So you have a shape. Let me stamp here. You have a sphere. Don't need a mirror. And you're like, oh, I want a metal mirror. So you come in here and I want a really shiny metallic mirror. And I want it to be red. And look at that. You got yourself a shiny metallic mirror. Or a shiny metallic sphere. Sorry. That's red. But then, you know, an hour later, you decide that you want to put a smiley face on it. So you're like, how would I do that? You come in here and you want to paint. So you come and you find some black paint. And this was a bad example. Because, hold on, let me explain. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. So you bring your tint amount up. And it goes away. And then anything that you try to paint on here, it's not going to show up. And that's because you have your tint up to 200%. You turn your tint up, it completely removes any hand painted spray paint. That's the term they use. Any spray painting that you've done. So if you're looking to spray paint things, make sure you do not have your tint jacked all the way up to 200%. It will not allow you to spray paint on it. It'll let you spray paint, but it won't show what you spray painted. All right, what was my number 3 here? Oh yeah, studio lighting. For this one, I'm going to load up one of my other sculpts. Sometimes I've seen people ask, you know, I painted my thing blue, but it looks gray. Why is that? I'll show you why. So this is a handgun / shotgun thingamajigger that I've made. And I utilized the mirror and the grid a lot in this, as you can see. But this is a studio lighting part of the tutorial, so I will unpause this. Studio lighting lets you see exactly, and I always forget where it is. Here. Nope, where is it? Over here? Yes. So it's underneath your guides. It's weird. But studio lighting lets you see exactly what your sculpt looks like under neutral lighting. So any lighting effects, they don't show up. And the thing is that when you start a sculpt, there's lighting effects. There's the blue sky, there's a sun. You're not working in neutral lighting in a brand new sculpt. So as you can see, this is how I actually painted this, because I didn't really intend to use this in a game. I mean, I painted it black and white, so if anybody else wanted to use it, they could paint it whatever color they wanted. But I still wanted it to look interesting, so to do that, you know, you turn the lights around. You mess with lighting. As you can see, there's a huge difference. So if you're trying to get precise coloring, this is not what this looks like. It's all the lighting. So use studio lighting to your benefit. Let's see. I'm trying to. I have a list here. Oh yeah, cut and crop. Well, might as well use this to do it. No, this is too many parts. I will find another creation to show this off. Do not look at this dead tree. It's ugly. We'll use this one. This is the subject of my most recent videos on YouTube that I've been working on. Still not finished. Still working on it. But cutting is your friend. Cropping is your friend. And it's something that once you learn how to use, you're gonna be flying through sculpts much quicker, because you can create shapes that are much more difficult to make without cutting and cropping. If that makes any sense. I will show you. Like this piece right here, these two pieces are literally so I took a rounded cube. I'm going to do this quickly. Hold on, my wands are, I'm losing them. Just took a rounded cube, and then I... all right, well, see, the mirror is not where I want it, but I'm going to do this fast. Took a rounded cube. And actually, I can do it this way. Just going to pull this piece. Nope. Sorry. I took a rounded cube, and these are the tools that I'm talking about. You have crop and cutout. Cutout is amazing. If you take another rounded cube and just make it smaller inside, boop, pull it out. Whoops. Get out of the sculpt, because when you use a cutout, it turns one sculpt into, or one object or one sculpt, into two objects or two sculpts. So then you can pull this out. And then go back in, and we'll get a square. And then we will cut there. Obviously this is messy and I'm not really paying much attention, but as you can see, you can, you can get shapes that would be very difficult to just try and build up. And crop does the same thing as cutout, except it deletes the negative space. So in this case, when I cut this would disappear and I would just be left with this. So I mean, I tend to use cutout simply because it leaves me with more to work with, which leads me into the next thing is make mistakes. Dreams is perfect, perfectly set up for capturing those like happy mistakes. I'm doing air quotes right now that everybody talks about, but it's true. Like one of the things that I'll explain, and you can see it in the videos, is and this is really, it's a really minor one, but it's it's a good example. Hold on, let me turn on studio lighting here so we can actually see guides. All right, so you can see it in the video of this. Initially, I had a ceiling here that above, like just a tiny little cup, like only a few inches high. There was a ceiling, metal, well, metal, air quotes again. But then when an hour later, as I'm sculpting, I realized that I had cut it incorrectly, and that I had to delete it. And then I realized, oh well, there's a space in here now. And then that space, this floating ceiling from this altered the entire direction of this sculpt, because then I was like, oh, I could place brackets and this could be falling apart instead of being a really clean sci-fi build. It immediately turned into something else, and that was completely by mistake. It was a mistake that I had caught and decided to work off of. This software is amazing for things like that, where something happens that you weren't intending and you work off of it. I'm in love with this stuff because of that. And reuse assets again. This is this is this just cut into. This is this just made smaller. Reusing assets, not only does it help with your thermometer, it helps with speed. You don't have to keep sculpting things over and over and over again if you're reusing assets. So like again, this is this and this is this, just smaller. Yeah, so I didn't want to make an incredibly long video, but those are just a few of the tips that I would give people if they're still figuring out sculpting. So thanks for watching.